Are we streaming now? What's going on? I thought I was with you the whole time. That was super weird. Um, that was super weird. Sorry, I was chatting with you the whole time. I was saying goodbye to Micheline and everything because the timer for the session was running, and then I realized none of you were responding to me, and I'm like, what's going on? Um, and yeah, well, there it is. Dad's back. Welcome back. That's why I couldn't see how many viewers there are, I guess. And the session now is count 0. I don't know what's going on. Oh, here we go. 38 seconds again. Wow. Indeed, Jade. Good timing. Alison, Bublin, I tried to set the carpet on fire, Alison. Nothing new there then. Fifth rug we've had in this week. Cutting up a rug. How are we all doing? Yeah, happy Pride Month, y'all. What do you mean, tried? Yeah, well, some of it's still there, so you have to try hard on that, I'm afraid. Oh, dude. So you missed your number 1. That's actually your number 2. But you missed the first one. So tough. We'll count that as number 1. Kolmasvar. Kolmasvarvas. The shirt is very festive. It's one of my summer shirts, isn't it? The baking on Tuesday. I'm not sure the baking will be gay. We're just going to be baking, but we'll be making some colourful cupcakes. You're planning to go back to college for a career change. Would you like to spill the tea there, Magusa, or is it too early to say? Logan spoiled cupcakes. Yeah, that's fine. It was due to be announced. Um, if you insist, we can call them that. Just kind of what kind of sprinkles is the question, isn't it? We could make fairy cakes. Do you know what a fairy cake is? Does anybody know what a fairy cake is? No, they are not gluten free. Sprinkled toast. You mean a Dutch breakfast? Miss Cyrilla Fay knows. No food coloring, like fairy bread. I don't know what fairy bread is, actually. Love a fairy cake. Stimming dragon, there we go. Wee little cakes. Aye, but um, yeah, bring me some edible glitter to sprinkle on top of the cupcakes. Absolutely, I'm up for that. Fairy bread. No, I don't know what that is then. Okay, so you take a cupcake, yeah, like you make them in a muffin tray, isn't it? So yeah, round and whatever else. You cut out the top, the center. So you cut out a little circle, and you cut that in half, and then you've got two little moon-shaped sections, and you put butter icing in the middle, and then you put those back in, and they're like wings. Made those at primary school. It's been a long time. It's about time. I'm trying to burn out from this profession, so I want to go back and change my career direction into mental health counselling. Okay. Uh, there we go. Um, yeah, patisserie stuff is good. Perfect for baking stream. And they're not dry on the inside. Perfect. Yeah, because it's butter frosting, man. I've got to look up a recipe. Cannot wait to see. Let's fill them cupcakes. Bubbling. Um, so, gang, you'll also have missed me saying that I still haven't picked up my book yet. Yeah, I know, but I always seem to struggle with butter frosting. But I'll look some up. Um, I like beat it too much or something. I don't know what that's all about. It's a great time for cupcakes. Cream cheese frosting. Cream cheese frosting. Got to chill it longer. Know what it is? I'm gonna dye them for sure. We'll do different colors. Oh. All right, I have a plan. Beating it 5 minutes in. What? Cream cheese lemon. Yes. 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 Uh, I thought my. Yes, yes, you're quite right. Feels like Christmas. What are we reading today? We are continuing with our adventures of Sherlock Holmes. This is a short version from Oxford's World Classics. This is from the series where Watson's already married. He's moved out, and they're kind of coming back. So they're both a bit older. Um, you need black food coloring for Lokester. I don't know about that. I just put some charcoal in there. That might work. A crushed up charcoal pill. Let's see why I wouldn't. Um, I need Watson and Holmes fanfic for Pride. Um, isn't charcoal banned as a food additive? Why would that be? I mean, you take charcoal when you're sick. I ever thought about creating your own recipe, but which recipes? I mean, I've kind of found most of the ones I've been using from the internet, but I guess so. You can get it inactivates some medicines. Oh, I see. Right. Well, I don't think any of us are on meds here, so should be all right. It causes stomach irritation to the point of nausea and vomiting. I don't know about that. Like um I had a bunch the other week. I just you can buy these little activated charcoal capsules, and if you've got diarrhea, it's great. Or or it's fountaining out the front end if you can keep it down. Um, yeah, because it's my personal spin. Yeah, I think so, Miss Cirillo. That's it's been thought about. Okay, nice with a 98. All right, okay, cool. Um, so yeah, the charcoal tablets here, at least in the Czech Republic, the reason you take them is if you've had food poisoning or upset stomach even, or just hit the lager too hard, and it kind of bungs you up a little bit, to be honest. And you just have 2 to 8 of those things, and you crush them up and drink them, or just chew them up and drink some water down after. Never had any issues. I'm talking about like putting one or two in like a cupcake mix. Do you know what I mean? I think it would be fine, but it's something to look into. Thank you, Magoose. I didn't know. Um, but is that like charcoal, or is that like an activated charcoal? So that's, I guess, I don't know if there's a difference. Any poisoning or pill overdose cleans you quite well. There we go. We need nettle cupcakes. Nettle cupcakes, that could work too. Okay, I just don't know if we've got enough time. Um, hmm, got it. There we go. That makes sense. Like Magusa was saying, that if you're taking meds, they'll flush it out. Because if it does it with poison, then why wouldn't it do it to anything else? Nettles are totally edible. Yeah, they're very tasty. In fact, nettle tea, nettle soup, steam them up. Okay, all right. Thank you. Lesson learned. Um, I did not know. All right. Well then, what's the other options for black? Uh, Grapefruit for some medication, yeah. And I know for some epilepsy medication, for example. Squid ink, yeah, but that seems a bit extreme. Um, yeah, it's natural food coloring I would prefer, but I mean, I'll buy some Jesus. I mean, I'll fucking put some E numbers in there. It's gonna be chomping it down with a bunch of sugar anyway. Um, you're going now. You don't. Do you need to leave Fiber Frank? Uh, yeah, blackberries. It's gonna be a bit more blue though, isn't it? and squid ink adds umami flavor, but maybe that's what Istvan Toth cupcake needs. Cocoa? Would it be black? Um, yeah, I guess. Thanks, Magusa. Um, okay. Thanks, scale size hole. Grape juice. Oh, mommy. Mommy, I'm home. Dark brown is acceptable. You can buy black cocoa powder. I've not seen that. Dutch cocoa could work. Well, I see. Okay. Okay. Well, I'll have a little investigation on that. All right, dearest chat. We're going to dive into. Oh my! We've only got 2 stories left here in this book. Then I really will have to pick up the other one. I know 3. Um, Not sure if we're going to stream next week because it's getting a little bit hectic. So keep your eyes open. I'm hoping we can somehow wing it. It depends if um, mods have time. Sally's traveling, and obviously she deserves to have a holiday too. So we'll see if someone else can get on board. But Dutch black cocoa powder, yeah, I've not really seen it. I mean, I've seen Dutch cocoa, but I don't know how black it is in comparison. Mix green and red, and you'll have black Xmas cookies experienced. Oh, okay, thank you. Rat-eye next week. I'm not ready. You will be. You will be. Uh, you still have black food dye? No way. Do it. Do it. Absolutely. Okay. The events are coming so fast, I'm starting to freak out. Breathe. Hydrate. It's all good. We'll have a nice time. There's nothing to freak out about. It's all going to be good. Um, no, there's lots of people who can't make Rat-eye this year, but it'll be there next year for sure. For sure, for sure. Hello, good evening. The poll. Yes, I'm going to ask you about the poll. Cactalius's poll. Is that what you're talking about? Okay. It's so nice that you're all busy sewing. Not the poll. What else was I supposed to ask you about? There was something else, wasn't there? Someone spilled the tea. Send me a private message. You're in Scotland, Miss Cyrilla Fay. For it to not be raining would be more unusual, surely. Um, the feet. Thank you, Bublina. Um, I am. I am Mega. People like to have me on the background when they're working. Um, Brooklyn. All right. So we're going to get into this story tonight. The first is called The Noble Bachelor. And we'll see if we get through 2, or maybe we'll just do the one. About 20 pages. Should be good. Hello, astronaut Anya. Are you an Anya or an Anya? Love a noble bachelor. Anya. Okay. Because I know an Anya from Stroud. Boob gets the Automod badge of shame. She tries every time. We should do stats on that. Who? No, don't. Actually. All right. No, no. Yeah, I've actually. This is probably one of my favorite things. Is that I was dressed as Sir Arthur Conan Doyle for a German TV program, and I bought the costume. It's pretty awesome. It's a four-piece with a three-piece suit with a long coat as well. Thank you, Astronaut Anya. I still have it. I bought it. Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have like pockets and stuff, and it could redo like at some point if I have the money, I'll get the lining redone with pockets and things. But yeah, it's pretty awesome. Um, I will let you know. Reveal the suit. I will at some point. Okay, here we go. Ready? The Noble Bachelor. The Lord St. Simon marriage and its curious termination have long since ceased to be a subject of interest in those exalted circles in which the unfortunate bridegroom moves. Fresh scandals have eclipsed it, and their more piquant details have drawn the gossips away from this 4-year-old drama. As I have reason to believe, however, that the full facts have never been revealed to the general public, and as my friend Sherlock Holmes had a considerable share in clearing up the matter, I feel that no memoir of him would be complete without some little sketch of this remarkable episode. It was a few weeks before my own marriage, during the days when I was still sharing rooms with Holmes in Baker Street, that he came home from an afternoon stroll to find a letter on the table waiting for him. I had remained indoors all day, for the weather had taken a sudden turn to rain, with high autumnal winds, and the Jezeel bullet which I had brought back in one of my limbs as a relic of my Afghan campaign throbbed with a dull persistency. With my body in one easy chair and my legs up on another, I had surrounded myself with a cloud of newspapers until at last, saturated with the news of the day, I tossed them all aside and lay listless, watching the huge crest and monogram upon the envelope upon the table, and wondering lazily who my friend's noble correspondent could be. "Here is a very fashionable epistle," I remarked as he entered. "Your morning's letters, if I remember right, were from a fishmonger and a tide waiter." "Yes, my correspondence is certainly the charming variety," he answered, smiling, "and the humbler are always usually the more interesting. This looks like one of those unwelcome social summonses which call upon a man either to be bored or to lie." He broke the seal and glanced over the contents. "Oh, come, it may prove to be something of interest after all." Oh, come, it may prove to be something of interest after all." "Not social, then?" "No, distinctly professional, and from a noble client, one of the highest in England." "Oh, my dear fellow, I congratulate you." "I assure you, Watson, without affectation, that the status of my client is a matter of less moment to me than the interest of his case. It is just possible, however, that that also may not be wanting in this new investigation. You've been reading the papers diligently of late, have you not?" "It looks like it," said I, ruefully, pointing to a huge bundle in the corner. "Have had nothing else to do." "It is fortunate, for you will perhaps be able to post me up. I read nothing except the criminal news and the agony column. The latter is always instructive. But if you have followed recent events so closely, you must have read about the Lord St. Simon and his wedding?" "Oh, yes, with the deepest interest." "And that is well. The letter which I hold in my hand is from Lord St. Simon. I will read it to you, and in return you must turn over those papers and let me have whatever bears upon the matter. This is what he says: "Dear Mr. Sherlock Holmes, Lord Backwater tells me that I may place implicit reliance upon your judgment and discretion. I have determined, therefore, to call upon you and to consult you in reference to the very painful event which has occurred in connection with my wedding. Mr. Lestrade of Scotland Yard is acting already in the matter, but he assures me that he sees no objection to your cooperation, and that he even thinks that it might be of some assistance. I will call at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and should you have any other engagement at that time, I hope you will postpone it, as this is a matter of paramount importance. Yours faithfully, Robert St. Simon." It is dated from Grosvenor Mansion, written with a quill pen, and the noble lord has had the misfortune to get a smear of ink upon the outer side of his right little finger," remarked Holmes, as he folded up the epistle. "He says 4 o'clock. It is 3 now. He'll be in here in an hour." "Then I have just time, with your assistance, to get clear upon the subject. Turn over those papers and arrange the extracts in order of time while I take a glance as to who our client is." He picked up a red-covered volume from a line of books of reference beside the mantelpiece. "Here he is," said he, sitting down and flattening it out upon his knee. Robert Walsingham de Vere St. Simon, second son of the Duke of Balmoral. Hum. Arms: azure, three caltrops, and chief over a fess sable. Born in 1846. He's 41 years of age, which is mature for marriage. Was Under Secretary for the Colonies in a late administration. The Duke, his father, was at one time Secretary for Foreign Affairs. They inherit Plantagenet blood by direct descent and Tudor on the distaff side. Huh. Well, there is nothing very instructive in all this. I think I must turn to you, Watson, for something more solid. I have a very little difficulty in finding what I want, said I, but the facts are quite recent, and the matter struck me as remarkable. I feared to refer them to you, however, as I knew that you had an inquiry on hand and that you disliked the intrusion of other matters. Oh, you mean the little problem of the Grosvenor Square furniture van? That is quite cleared up now, though indeed it was obvious from the first. Pray give me the results of your newspaper selections. Here is the first notice which I can find. It is in the personal column of the Morning Post, and dates, as you can see, some weeks back. The marriage has been arranged, it says, and will, if rumours correct, very shortly take place between Lord Robert St. Simon, second son of the Duke of Balmoral, and Miss Hattie Doran, the only daughter of Aloysius Doran, Esquire, of San Francisco, California, USA. That is all. Terse and to the point, remarked Holmes, stretching his long, thin legs towards the fire. There was a paragraph amplifying this in one of the society papers in the same week. Here it is. There will soon be a call for protection in the marriage market, for the present free trade principle appears to tell heavily against our home product. One by one, the management of the noble houses of Great Britain is passing into the hands of our fair cousins from across the Atlantic. An important addition has been made during the week last to the list of prizes which have been borne away by these charming invaders. Lord St. Simon, who has shown himself for over 20 years proof against the little god's arrows, has now defiantly announced his approaching marriage with Miss Hattie Doran, the fascinating daughter of a Californian millionaire. Miss Doran, whose graceful figure and striking face attracted much attention at the Westbury House festivities, is an only child, and is currently reported that her dowry will run to the considerably over 6 figures. The expectancies for the future, as it is an open secret that the Duke of Barrymore has been compelled to sell his pictures within the last few years, and as Lord St. Simon has no property of his own, save the small estate of Birchmoor, it is obvious that the Californian heiress is not only the gainer by an allowance, but which will enable her to make the easy and common transition from a Republican lady to a British title. Anything else? Asked Holmes, yawning. Oh, yes, plenty. Then there's another note in the Morning Post to say that the marriage would be an absolutely quiet one, that it would be at St. George's, Hanover Square, that only half a dozen intimate friends would be invited, and that the party would return to the furnished house at Lancaster Gate, which has been taken by Mr. Aloysius Doran. 2 days later, that is on Wednesday last, there was a curt announcement that the wedding had taken place, and that the honeymoon would be passed at Lord Backwater's place near Petersfield. There's all the notices which appear after the disappearance of the bride. Before the what? Asked Holmes with a start. Well, the vanishing of the lady. When did she vanish, then? At the wedding breakfast. Indeed, this is more interesting than it promised to be. Quite dramatic, in fact. Yes, it struck me as being a little out of the common. They often vanish before the ceremony and occasionally during the honeymoon, but I cannot call to mind anything quite so prompt as this. Pray, let me have the details. Well, I warn you that they are very incomplete. Perhaps we may make them less so. Such as they are set forth in a single article of a morning newspaper of yesterday, which I will read to you. It is headed, Singular Occurrence at a Fashionable Wedding. The family of Lord Robert St. Simon has been thrown into the greatest consternation by the strange and painful episodes which have taken place in connection with his wedding. The ceremony, as shortly announced in the papers of yesterday, occurred on the previous morning, but it is only now that it has been possible to confirm the strange rumours which have been so persistently floating about. In spite of the attempts of the friends to hush up the matter, so much public attention has now been drawn to it that no good purpose can be served by affecting to disregard what is a common subject for conversation. The ceremony, which was performed at St. George's, Hanover Square, was a very quiet one, no one being present save the father of the bride, Mr. Aloysius Doran, The Duchess of Balmoral, Lord Backwater, Lord Eustace, and the Lady Clara St. Simon, the younger brother and sister of the bridegroom, and Lady Alicia Whittington. The whole party proceeded afterwards to the house of Mr. Aloysius Doran at Lancaster Gate, where breakfast had been prepared. It appears that some little trouble had been caused by a woman, whose name has not yet been ascertained, who endeavoured to force her way into the house after the bridal party, alleging that she had some claim upon Lord St. Simon. It was only after a painful and prolonged scene that she was ejected by the butler and the footman. The bride, who had fortunately entered the house before this unpleasant interruption, had sat down to breakfast with the rest when she complained of a sudden indisposition and retired to her room. Her prolonged absence having caused some comment, her father followed her, but learned from the maid that she had only come up to her chamber for an instant, caught up an ulster and a bonnet, and hurried down to the passage. One of the footmen declared that he had seen a lady leave the house thus apparelled, but he refused to credit that it was his mistress, believing her to be with the company. On ascertaining that his daughter had disappeared, Mr. Aloysius Doran, in conjunction with the bridegroom, instantly put themselves into communication with the police, and very energetic inquiries are being made which will probably result in a speedy clearing up of this very singular business. Up to a late hour last night, however, nothing had transpired as to the whereabouts of the missing lady. There are rumours of foul play in the matter, and it is said that the police have caused the arrest of the woman who had caused the original disturbance, in the belief that from jealousy or some other motive she may have been concerned in the rather strange disappearance of the bride. And that is all. Only one little item in another of the morning papers, but it is a suggestive one, and it is that Miss Flora Miller, the lady who had caused the disturbance, has actually been arrested. It appears that she was formerly a danseuse at the Allegro, and that she had known the bridegroom for some years. There are no further particulars, and the whole case is in your hands now, so far as it has been set forth in the public press. And an exceedingly interesting case it appears to be. I would not have missed it for the world, but there is a ring at the bell, Watson, and as the clock makes it a few minutes after 4, I have no doubt that this will prove to be our noble client. Do not dream of going, Watson, for I very much prefer having a witness, if only as to check my own memory. Lord Robert St. Simon, announced our page-boy, throwing open the door. A gentleman entered with a pleasant, cultured face, high nose, and pale, with something perhaps of petulance about the mouth, and with the steady, well-opened eye of a man whose pleasant lot it had ever been to command and to be obeyed. His manner was brisk, and yet his general appearance gave an undue impression of age, for he had a slight forward stoop and a little bend of the knees as he walked. His hair, too, as he swept off his very curly-brimmed hat, was grizzled around the edges and thin upon the top. As to his dress, it was careful to the verge of foppishness, with high collar, black frock coat, white waistcoat, yellow gloves, patent leather shoes, and light-coloured gaiters. He advanced slowly into the room, turning his head from left to right, and swinging in his right hand the cord which held his golden eyeglasses. "Good day, Lord St. Simon," said Holmes, rising and bowing. "Pray, take the basket chair. This is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson. Draw up a little to the fire, and we shall talk this matter over." "A most painful matter to me, as you can most readily imagine, Mr. Holmes. I've been cut to the quick. I understand you already managed to address several delicate cases of this sort, sir, though I presume that they were hardly from the same class of society." "No, I'm descending." "I beg your pardon?" "My last client of the sort was a king." "Oh, really? I had no idea. And which king?" "The King of Scandinavia." "What? Had he lost his wife?" "You can understand," said Holmes suavely, "that I extend to the affairs of my other clients the same secrecy which I promised to you and yours." Of course. Very right. Very right. I'm sure I beg pardon. As to my own case, I'm ready to give you any information which may assist you in forming an opinion." "Thank you. I have already learned all that is in the public prints, nothing more. I presume that I may take it as correct, this article, for example, as to the disappearance of the bride." Lord St. Simon glanced it over. "Yes, it is correct, as far as it goes." "But it needs a great deal of supplementing before anyone could offer an opinion. I think that I may arrive at my facts most directly by questioning you." Pray do so. When did you first meet Miss Hattie Doran? In San Francisco a year ago. You were traveling in the States? Yes. And did you become engaged then? No, but you were on friendly footing. I was amused by her society and could see that she could see that I was amused. Her father is very rich? Well, he's said to be the richest man on the Pacific slope. And how did he make his money? In mining. He had nothing a few years ago. Then he struck gold, invested it, and came up by leaps and bounds. Now, what is your impression as to the young lady's, your wife's character? The nobleman swung his glasses a little faster and stared down into the fire. You see, Mr. Holmes, said he, my wife was 20 before her father became a rich man. During that time, she ran free in a mining camp and wandered through woods or mountains, so that her education has come from nature rather than from the schoolmaster. She is what we call in England a tomboy, with a strong nature, wild and free, and fettered by any sorts of traditions. She is impetuous, volcanic, I was about to say. She is swift in making up her mind, and fearless in carrying out her resolutions. On the other hand, I would not have given her the name which I have the honour to bear. He gave a little stately cough. Had I not thought her to be at the bottom a noble woman. I believe she is capable of heroic self-sacrifice, and that anything dishonourable would be repugnant to her. Have you brought her photograph? I brought this with me. He opened a locket and showed us the full face of a very lovely woman. It was not a photograph, but an ivory miniature, and the artist had brought out the full effect of the lustrous black hair, the large dark eyes, and the exquisite mouth. Holmes gazed long and earnestly at it. Then he closed the locket and handed it back to Lord St. Simon. The young lady came to London, then, and you renewed your acquaintance. Yes, her father brought her over for this last London season. I met her several times, became engaged to her, and have now married her. She brought, I understand, a considerable dowry. A fair dowry, not more than is usual in my family. And this, of course, remains to you, since the marriage is a fait accompli. I really have made no inquiries on the subject. Very naturally not. Did you see Miss Doran on the day before the wedding? Yes. Was she in good spirits? Never better. She kept talking of what we should do in our future lives. Indeed, that is very interesting. And on the morning of the wedding? She was bright as possible, at least until after the ceremony. And did you observe any change in her then? Well, to tell the truth, I saw then the first signs that I'd ever seen that her temper was just a little sharp. The incident, however, was too trivial to relate, and can have no possible bearing upon the case. Pray, let us have it, for all that. Oh, it is very childish. She dropped her bouquet as we went towards the vestry. She was passing the front pew at the time, and it fell over the pew. There was a moment's delay, but the gentleman in the pew handed it up to her again, and it did not appear to be the worse for the fall. Yet, when I spoke to her of the matter, she answered me abruptly, and in the carriage on our way home she seemed absurdly agitated over this travelling cause. Indeed, you say there was a gentleman in the pew. Some of the general public were present, then? No, as it is impossible to exclude them when the church is open. This gentleman was not one of your wife's friends? No, no, no. I call him a gentleman by courtesy, but he was quite a common-looking person. I hardly noticed his appearance, but I really think that we are wandering rather far from the point. Lady St. Simon, then, returned from the wedding in a less cheerful frame of mind than she had gone to it. What did she do on re-entering her father's house? I saw her in conversation with her maid. And who is her maid? Alice is her name. She's an American and came from California with her. A confidential servant. A little too much so. It seemed to me that her mistress allowed her to take great liberties. Still, of course, in America they look upon these things in a different way. And how long did she speak to this Alice? A few minutes. I had something else to think of. You did not overhear what they said? Lady St. Simon said something about jumping a claim, and she was accustomed to using slang of that kind. I have no idea what she meant. American slang is very expressive sometimes. And what did your wife do when she had finished speaking to her maid? She walked into the breakfast room. On your arm? No, alone. She was very independent in little manners like that. Then afterwards sat down for 10 minutes or so. She rose hurriedly, uttered some words of apology, and left the room. She never came back. But this maid Alice, as I understand, deposes that she went to her room, covered her bride's dress with a long ulster, put on a bonnet, and went out. Quite so. She was afterwards seen walking into Hyde Park in company with Flora Miller, a woman who is now in custody and who had already made a disturbance at Mr. Doran's house that morning. Ah, yes. I should like a few particulars as to this young lady and to your relations to her. Lord St. Simon shrugged his shoulders and raised his eyebrows. We have been on friendly footing for some years. I may say on a very friendly footing. She used to be at the Allegro. I have not treated her ungenerously, and she has no just cause of complaint against me, but you know what women are, Mr. Holmes. Flora was a dear little thing, but exceedingly hot-headed and devotedly attached to me. She wrote me dreadful letters when she heard that I was to be married, and to tell the truth, the reason why I had the marriage celebrated so quietly was that I feared lest there might be a scandal in the church. She came to Mr. Doran's door just after we returned, and she endeavoured to push her way in, uttering very abusive expressions towards my wife, and even threatening her. But I had foreseen the possibility of something of the sort, and I had given instructions to the servants, who had soon pushed her out again. She was quiet when she saw that there was no good in making a row. Did your wife hear all this? No, thank goodness, she did not. And she was seen walking with this very woman afterwards. Yes, that is what Mr. Lestrade of Scotland Yard looks upon as so serious. It is thought that Flora decoyed my wife out and laid some terrible trap for her. This man is awful. Yes, he's gentry. They used to rule in the country for 800, 900,000 years. They get their way. They have money and influence. Not much has changed. Decoyed my wife out and laid some terrible trap for her. Well, it is a possible supposition. You think so too? I did not say a probable one, but you do not yourself look upon this as likely. I do not think Flora would hurt a fly. Still, jealousy is a strange transformer of characters. Pray, what is your own theory as to what took place? Well, really, I came to seek a theory, not to propound one. I've given you all the facts. Since you ask me, however, I may say that it has occurred to me as possible that the excitement of this affair, the consciousness that she has made so immense a social stride, had the effect of causing some little nervous disturbance in my wife. In short, that she had become suddenly deranged? Well, really, when I consider that she has turned her back, I will not say upon me, but upon so much that many have aspired to without success, I can hardly explain it in any other fashion. Well, certainly, that is also a conceivable hypothesis, said Holmes, smiling. And now, Lord St. Simon, I think that I have nearly all my data. May I ask you whether you were seated at the breakfast table so that you could see out of the window? We could see the other side of the road and the park. Quite so. Then I do not think that I need to detain you any longer. I shall communicate with you. Should you be fortunate enough to solve this problem, said our client, rising. I have solved it. Uh, what was that? I say that I have solved it. Where then is my wife? Oh, that is a detail which I shall speedily supply. Lord St. Simon shook his head. I'm afraid that it will take wiser head than yours or mine, he remarked, and bowing in a stately old-fashioned manner, he departed. It is very good of Lord St. Simon to honour my head by putting it on a level with his own, said Sherlock Holmes, laughing. I think that I shall have a whisky and soda and a cigar after all this cross-questioning, and formed my conclusions of the case before our client came into the room. My dear Holmes, I have notes of several similar cases, though none, as I have remarked before, which were quite as prompt. My whole examination served to turn my conjecture into certainty. Circumstantial evidence, circumstantial evidence is occasionally very convincing, as when you find a trout in milk, to quote Thoreau's example. but I've heard all that you have heard, without, however, the knowledge of pre-existing cases which serves me so well. There was a parallel instance in Aberdeen some years back, and something on very much the same lines at Munich the year after the Franco-Prussian War. It is one of those cases. But hello, here is Lestrade. Good afternoon, Lestrade. You will find an extra tumbler upon the sideboard, and there are cigars in the box. The official detective was attired in a pea jacket and a cravat, which gave him a decidedly nautical appearance, and he carried a black canvas bag in his hand. With a short greeting, he seated himself and lit the cigar which had been offered to him. "What's up, then?" asked Holmes with a twinkle in his eye. "You look dissatisfied." "And I feel dissatisfied. It is this infernal St. Simon marriage case. I can make neither head nor tail of the business." "Really? You surprise me. Who ever heard of such a mixed affair? Every clue seems to slip through my fingers. I've been at work upon it all day." "And very wet it seems to have made you," said Holmes, laying his hand upon the arm of the pea jacket. "Why, yes, I've been dragging the Serpentine." "In heaven's name, what for?" "In search of the body of Lady St. Simon." Sherlock Holmes leaned back in his chair and laughed heartily. "Have you dragged the basin of the Trafalgar Square fountain?" he asked. "Why, what do you mean?" "Because you have just as good a chance of finding this lady in one as the other." Lestrade shot an angry glance at my companion. "I suppose you know all about it," he snarled. "Well, I've only just heard the facts, but my mind is made up." "Oh, indeed. Then you think that the Serpentine plays no part in the matter?" "It is very unlikely." "Well, then perhaps you would kindly explain how it is that we found this in it." He opened his bag as he spoke and tumbled onto the floor a wedding dress of watered silk, a pair of white satin shoes, and the bride's wreath and veil all discoloured and soaked in water. "There," said he, putting a new wedding ring upon the top of the pile. "There's a little nut for you to crack, Mr. Holmes." "Oh, indeed," said my friend, blowing blue rings into the air. "You dragged them from the Serpentine?" "No. They were found floating near the margin by the park keeper. They were identified as her clothes, and it seemed to me that if the clothes were there, the body would not be far off." "By the same brilliant reasoning, every man's body is to be found in the neighbourhood of his wardrobe. And pray, what did you hope to arrive at through this?" "At some evidence implicating Flora Miller in the disappearance." "I'm afraid you will find it difficult." "Are you indeed now?" cried Lestrade with some bitterness. "I'm afraid, Holmes, that you are not very practical with your deductions and your inferences. You've made two blunders in as many minutes. This dress does implicate Miss Flora Miller." "And how?" "In the dress is a pocket. In the pocket is a card case. In the card case is a note, and here is the very note." He slapped it down upon the table in front of him. "Listen to this. 'You will see me when all is ready. Come at once. F.H.M.' Now, my theory all along has been that Lady St. Simon was decoyed away by Flora Miller, and that she, with no confederates no doubt, was responsible for her disappearance. Here, signed with her initials, is the very note which was no doubt quickly slipped into her hand at the door, and which lured her within their reach." "Very good, Lestrade," said Holmes, laughing. "You really are very fine indeed. Let me see it." He took up the paper in a listless way, but his attention instantly became riveted, and he gave a little cry of satisfaction. "This is indeed importance," he said. "Ha! You find it so?" "Extremely so. I congratulate you warmly." Lestrade rose in triumph and bent his head to look. "Why," he shrieked, "you're looking on the wrong side." "On the contrary, this is the right side." "The right side? Are you mad? Here's the note written in a pencil over here." "And over here is what appears to be the fragment of a hotel bill, which interests me deeply." "Well, there's nothing in it. I looked at it before," said Lestrade. "October 4th, rooms 8 shillings, breakfast 2 shillings 6pence, cocktail 1 shilling, lunch 2 shillings 6pence, glass sherry 8 pence. I see nothing in that." "Well, very likely not. It is most important all the same. As to the note, it is important also, or at least the initials are, so I congratulate you again." "I've wasted time enough," said Lestrade, rising. "I believe in hard work and not sitting by the fire spinning fine theories. Good day, Mr. Holmes, and we shall see which gets to the bottom of the matter first." He gathered up the garments, thrust them into the bag, and made for the door. Just one hint to you, Lestrade, drawls Holmes before his rival vanished. I will tell you the true solution of the matter. Lady St. Simon is a myth. There is not, and there never has been, any such person. Lestrade looked sadly at my companion, and then he turned to me, tapped his forehead 3 times, shook his head solemnly, and hurried away. He had hardly shut the door behind him when Holmes rose and put on his overcoat. "There is something in what the fellow says about outdoor work," he remarked. "I think, Watson, that I must leave you to your papers for a little." It was after 5 o'clock when Sherlock Holmes left me, but I had no time to be lonely, for within an hour there arrived a confectioner's man with a very large flat box. This he unpacked with the help of a youth whom he had brought with him, and presently, to my great astonishment, a quite epicurean little cold supper began to be laid out upon our humble lodging-house mahogany. There were a couple of braces of old woodcock, a pheasant, a pâté de foie gras pie, with a group of ancient and cobwebby bottles. Having laid out all these luxuries, my 2 visitors vanished like the genii of the Arabian Nights, with no explanations, save that things had been paid for, and we were ordered to this address. Just before 9 o'clock, Sherlock Holmes stepped briskly into the room. His features were gravely set, but there was a light in his eye which made me think that he had not been disappointed in his conclusions. "Ah, they have laid the supper, then?" he said, rubbing his hands. "You seem to expect company. They've laid for 5." "Yes, I fancy we may have some company dropping in," said he. "I am surprised that Lord St. Simon has not already arrived. Ah, I fancied that I'd hear his step now upon the stairs." It was indeed our visitor of the morning who came bustling in, dangling his glasses more vigorously than ever. He came in the afternoon. That's a mistake there. Who came bustling in, dangling his glasses more vigorously than ever, and with a very perturbed expression upon his aristocratic features. "My messenger reached you, then?" asked Holmes. "Oh, yes, and I confess that the contents startled me beyond measure. Have you good authority for what you say?" "The best possible." Lord St. Simon sank into a chair and passed his hand over his forehead. "What will the Duke say," he murmured, "when he hears that one of his family has been subjected to such a humiliation?" "It is the purest accident. I cannot allow that there is any humiliation." "Now you look on these things from another standpoint." "I fail to see that anyone is to blame. I can hardly see how the lady could have acted otherwise, through her abrupt method of doing it was undoubtedly to be regretted. Having no mother, she had no one to advise her at such a crisis." "It was a slight, sir, a public slight," said Lord St. Simon, tapping his fingers upon the table. "You must make allowance for this poor girl, placed in so unprecedented a position." "I will make no allowance. I'm very angry indeed, and I've been shamefully used." "I think I heard a ring," said Holmes. "Yes, there are steps on the landing. If I cannot persuade you to take a lenient view of the matter, Lord St. Simon, I have brought an advocate here who may be more successful." He opened the door and ushered in a lady and gentleman. "Lord St. Simon," said he, "allow me to introduce to you Mr. and Mrs. Francis Hay Moulton. The lady, I think, you have already met." At the sight of these newcomers, our client had sprung from his seat and stood very erect, with his eyes cast down and his hand thrust into the breast of his frock-coat, a picture of offended dignity. The lady had taken a quick step forward and held out her hand to him, but he still refused to raise his eyes. It was all well for his resolution, perhaps, for her pleading face was one which was hard to resist. "You're angry, Robert," said she. "Well, I guess you have every cause to be." "Pray, make no apology to me," said Lord St. Simon bitterly. "Oh, yes, I know that I treated you real bad, and that I should have spoken to you before I went out, but I was kind of rattled, and from the time when I saw Frank here again, I just didn't know what I was doing or saying. I only wonder that I didn't fall down and do a faint right there before the altar." "Perhaps, Mrs. Moulton, you would like my friend and me to leave the room while you explain this matter?" "If I may have an opinion," remarked the strange gentleman, We've had just a little too much secrecy over this business already. For my part, I should like all Europe and America to hear the rights of it." He was a small, wiry, sunburned man with a sharp face and alert manner. "Then I'll tell our story right away," said the lady. "Frank here and I met in '81 in McGuire's camp, near the Rockies, where Pa was working a claim. We were engaged to each other, Frank and I, but then one day Father struck a rich pocket and made a pile, while poor Frank here had a claim that petered out and came to nothing. The richer Pa grew, the poorer was Frank, so at last Pa wouldn't hear of our engagement lasting any longer, and he took me away to Frisco. Frank wouldn't throw up his hand, though, so he followed me there, and he saw me without Pa knowing anything about it. I would only have made him mad to know, so we just fixed it all up for ourselves. Frank said that he would go and make his pile too, and never come back to claim me until he had as much as Pa. So then I promised to wait for him to the end of time, and pledged myself not to marry anyone else while he lived. "Why shouldn't we be married right away then?" said he. "And then I will feel sure of you, and I won't claim to be your husband until I come back." Well, we talked it over, and he'd fixed it all up just so nicely with the clergyman all ready and waiting, that we just did it right there. And then Frank went off to seek his fortune, and I went back to Pa. The next that I heard of Frank was that he was in Montana, and then he went prospecting in Arizona, and then I heard of him in New Mexico. After that came a long newspaper story about how Minus Camp had been attacked by Apache Indians, and there was my Frank's name among the killed. I fainted dead away, and I was very sick for months after. Pa thought I had a decline and took me off to the half the doctors in Frisco. Not a word of news came for a year or more, so I never doubted that Frank was really dead. And then Lord St. Simon came to Frisco, and we came to London, and a marriage was arranged, and Pa was very pleased. But I felt all the time that no man on this earth would ever take the place in my heart that had been given to my poor Frank. Still, if I'd married Lord St. Simon, of course I'd have done my duty by him. We can't command our love, but we can our actions. I went to the altar with him with the intention that I would make him just as good a wife as it was in me to be. But you may imagine what I felt when, just as I came to the altar rails, I glanced and saw Frank standing looking out at me from the first pew. I thought it was his ghost at first, but then I looked again, and there he was still, with a kind of question in his eyes, as if to ask me whether I were sorry to see him. I wonder I didn't drop. I know that everything was turning around, and the words of the clergyman were just like a buzz of a bee in my ear. I didn't know what to do. Should I stop the service and make a scene in the church? I glanced at him again, and he seemed to know what I was thinking, for he raised his finger to his lips to tell me to be still. And then I saw him scribble on a piece of paper, and I knew he was writing me a note. So as I passed his pew on the way out, I dropped my bouquet over to him, and he slipped the note into my hand when he returned me the flowers. It was only a line asking me to join him when he made the sign to me to do so. Of course, I never doubted for a moment that my first duty was now to him, and I determined to do just whatever he might direct. When I got back, I told my maid, who had known him in California, and had always been his friend, and I ordered her to say nothing, but to pack a few things and pack my ulster already. I knew I ought to have spoken to Lord St. Simon, but it was a dreadful hard before his mother and all those great people. I just made up my mind to run away and explain afterwards. I hadn't been at the table 10 minutes before I saw Frank out of the window on the other side of the road. He beckoned to me and then began walking into the park. I slipped out, put on my things, and followed him. Some woman came talking something or other about Lord St. Simon to me. Seemed to me, from the little I heard, as if he had a little secret of his own before marriage also. But I managed to get away from her and soon overtook Frank. We got into a cab together, and away we drove to some lodgings he had taken in Gordon Square. And that was my true wedding after all those years of waiting. Frank had been a prisoner among the Apaches and had escaped, came on to Frisco, found that I'd given him up for dead, and had gone to England, followed me there, and had come upon me at last on the very morning of my second wedding. "I saw it in the paper," exclaimed the American. "It gave the name in the church, but not where the lady lived." And then we had talked as to what we should do, and Frank was all for openness. But I was so ashamed of it all that I felt as if I would like to vanish away and never see any of them again, just sending a line to Pa, perhaps, to show him that I was alive. It was awful to me to think of all those lords and ladies sitting around the breakfast table and waiting for me to come back. So Frank took my wedding clothes and things and made a bundle of them so I should not be traced, and dropped them away somewhere where no one should find them. It is unlikely that we should have gone on to Paris tomorrow, only that this good gentleman, Mr. Holmes, came round to us this evening, though how he found us is more than I can think, and he showed us very clearly and kindly that I was wrong and that Frank was right, and that we should put ourselves in the wrong if we were so secret. And then he offered to give us a chance of talking to Lord St. Simon alone, and so we came right away, and I'm very sorry if I've given you pain, and I hope you do not think very meanly of me. Lord St. Simon had by no means relaxed his rigid attitude, but he had listened with a frowning brow and a compressed lip to this long narrative. "Excuse me," he said, "but it is not my custom to discuss my most intimate personal affairs in this public manner." "Then you won't forgive me? You won't shake hands before I go?" "Oh, certainly, if it would give you any pleasure." He put out his hand and coldly grasped that which she extended to him. "I had hoped," suggested Holmes, "that you would have joined us in a friendly supper." "I think that there you ask a little too much," responded his lordship. "I may be forced to acquiesce in these recent developments, but I can hardly be expected to make merry over them. I think that, with your permission, I will now wish you all a very good night." He included us all in a sweeping bow and stalked out of the room. "Then I trust that you at least will honor me with your company," said Sherlock Holmes. "It is always a joy to me to meet an American, Mr. Moulton, for I am one of those who believes that the folly of a monarch and the blundering of a minister in far gone years will not prevent our children from being some day citizens of the same world-wide country under a flag which will be a quartering of the Union Jack and the Stars and Stripes." "This case has been an interesting one," remarked Holmes when our visitors had left, "because it serves to show very clearly how simple the explanation may be of an affair which at first sight seems to be almost inexplicable. Nothing could be more natural than the sequence of events as narrated by this lady, and nothing stranger than the result when viewed, for instance, by Mr. Lestrade of Scotland Yard." "You were not yourself at fault, then?" "From the first, two facts were very obvious to me. The one, that the lady had been quite willing to undergo the wedding ceremony; the other, that she had repented of it within a few minutes of returning home. Obviously, something had occurred during the morning, then, to cause her to change her mind. What could that something be? She could not have spoken to anyone when she was out, for she had been in the company of the bridegroom. Had she seen someone, then? If she had, it must be someone from America, because she had spent so short a time in this country that she could hardly have allowed anyone to acquire so deep an influence over her that the mere sight of him would induce her to change her plans so completely. You see, we have already arrived by a process of exclusion at the idea that she might have seen an American. Then, who could this American be, and why should he possess so much influence over her? It might be a lover, it might be a husband. Her young her young womanhood had, I knew, been spent in rough scenes and under strange conditions. So far I had got before I ever heard Lord St. Simon's narrative. When he told us of a man in a pew, of the change in the bride's manner, of so transparent a device of obtaining a note as the dropping of a bouquet, of her resort to her confidential maid, and of her very significant allusion to claim jumping, which, in miners' parlance, means taking possession of that which another person has prior claim to, the whole situation became absolutely clear. She had gone off with a man, and the man was either her lover or was a previous husband, the chances being in favour of the latter. "And how in the world did you find them?" It might have been difficult, but friend Lestrade held information in his hands the value of which he did not himself know. The initials were, of course, of the highest importance, but more valuable still was it to know that within a week he had settled his bill at one of the most select London hotels. How did you deduce the select? By select prices. 8 shillings for a bed and eightpence for a glass of sherry pointed to one of the most expensive hotels. There are not so many in London which charge at that rate. In the second one, which I visited in Northumberland Avenue, I learned by an inspection of the book that Francis H. Moulton, an American gentleman, had left only the day before, and on looking over the entries against him, I came upon the very items which I had seen in the duplicate bill. His letters were to be forwarded to 226 Gordon Square, so thither I travelled, and being fortunate enough to find the loving couple at home, I ventured to give them some paternal advice, and to point out to them that it would be better in every way that they should make their position a little clearer both to the general public and to Lord St. Simon in particular. I invited them to meet him here, and as you see, I made him keep the appointment. But with no good very results, I remarked. His conduct was certainly not very gracious. Oh, Watson, said Holmes, smiling, perhaps you would not be very gracious either, if after all the troubles of wooing and wedding you find yourself deprived in an instant of wife and of fortune. I think that we may judge Lord St. Simon very mercifully, and thank our stars that we are never likely to find ourselves in the same position. Yeah, draw your chair up and hand me my violin. The only problem which we have still to solve is how to while away these bleak autumnal evenings. Thank you. Thank you, Hedda Tanglefoot. Thank you. Good had her reasons, yeah. Gotta be tough. I mean, we have means of communication at our disposal these days, don't we? The guy doesn't deserve one. Yeah, I guess not. He was a bit of a prig, wasn't he? I don't know. Maybe he'll find someone in the end. There's your yawn. Thank you, Bublina. Hey, Alexi1232. Thank you, Lady Leobova. And a bit of a hype train. Bits and bobs coming in. Beverage of choice this evening. Prig. Prig. That was a good yawn. 7 out of 10. Thank you. How's that one? Hey, Ren Cooper. It's 2:30 p.m. And where in Mexico is it hot as what am I drinking? That was awesome. It is fennel tea. I love fennel tea. Getting them all in at once. That was a 9 out of 10. Thank you, Lady MacDoug. It was certainly satisfactory. Now, let's have a look at this, shall we? Too forced? No, it was quite natural. Thank you. Um, I just put a little bit of voice into it. And that's 26 pages. It's going to be too long, that, isn't it? How long is the Copper Beaches then? Page 270 to what? Oh, yeah, it's also going to be 20 something in it. They're all about 20 odd pages, 26 as well. I don't think mini Lovecraft story. I don't have any Lovecraft, I'm afraid. I don't have any Lovecraft. Do we? See if we can find a Poe that I haven't read. Maybe a poem. A Poe poem. Let's have a bit of Poe. Poe, 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 Poe. Haycraft. I've not thought of that before. Lovecraft is criminal. Uh, What? That's private information. I have never been married as of yet. Never say never. The bells, the bells. Ah. Thank you, Ren. Um, we will do some Lovecraft. It's just that's not what we're doing yet. Did we read The Valley of Unrest? I think we did. Ah, let's read this one because we just had the full moon. Um, Edgar Allan Poe, The Sleeper. At midnight in the month of June, I stand beneath the mystic moon. An opiate vapor, dewy dim, exhales from out her golden rim, and softly dripping drop by drop upon the quiet mountain top, steals drowsily and musically into the universal valley. The rosemary nods upon the grave, and lily lolls upon the wave, wrapping the fog about its breast, the ruin moulders into rest, looking like Lethe Sea, the lake, the conscious slumber seems to take, and would not for the world awake. All beauty sleeps, and lo, where lies her casement open to the skies, Irene with her destinies. O lady bright, can it be right, this window open to the night? The wanton airs from the tree top laughingly through the lattice drop. The bodiless airs, a wizard rout, flit through thy chamber in and out, and wave the curtained canopy so fitfully, so carefully, about the closed and fringed lid, neath which thy slumbering soul lies hid, that o'er the floor and down the wall like ghosts the shadows rise and fall. O lady dear, hast thou no fear? Why and what art thou dreaming here? Sure thou art come o'er far off seas to wander these garden trees. Strange is thy palace, strange thy dress, strange above all thy length of tress, and this all solemn silentness. The lady sleeps. O may her sleep, which is enduring so deep, Heaven have her in its sacred keep, this chamber changed for one more holy, this bed for one more melancholy. I pray to God that she may lie for ever with unopened eye, while the dim sheeted ghosts go by. My love, she sleeps. O may her sleep, as it is lasting so deep, soft may the worms about her creep far in the forest, dim and old. For her may some tall vault unfold, some vault that oft hath flung its black and winged panels fluttering back, triumphant o'er the crested palls of her grand family funerals. Some sepulchre, remote, alone, against whose portal she hath thrown in childhood many an idle stone. Some tomb from out whose sounding door she never shall force an echo more. Thrilling to think, poor child of sin, it was the dead who groaned within. You guys. Here's one that's maybe fitting in um, purposes to the Sherlock Holmes story. Actually, it's called the Bridal Ballad, but it's Poe, so probably depressing as well. Bridal Ballad. The ring is on my hand, and the wreath is on my brow. Satins and jewels grand are all at my command, and I am happy now. And my lord he loves me well, but when first he breathed his vow, I felt my bosom swell, for the words rang as a knell, and the voice seemed his who fell in the battle down the dell, and who is happy now. But he spoke to reassure me, and he kissed my pallid brow, while a reverie came o'er me, and to the churchyard bore me. And I sighed to him before me, thinking him dead velor me. Oh, I am happy now. And thus the words were spoken, and this plighted vow, and though my faith be broken, and though my heart be broken, behold the golden token that proves me happy now. Would God I could awaken, for I dream I know not how, and my soul is sorely shaken, lest an evil step be taken, lest the dead who is forsaken may not be happy now. Live streaming. An unpublished drama. Scenes from Politian. So this is an unpublished drama. Did he publish any plays, actually? Do we know? Oh, that in itself. Oh my god, Al Araf. Whew, that's a biggie. That's a big one there. That's a big one right there. And Tamerlane, eh? Alright. Whew. Ouchie. There's some big ones here. Alright, let's find a 5-pager. Only wrote one and it wasn't published. Big old boy. Hello, hangover. We never finished Hans Pfahl, and we probably won't. But it was unfinished. I'm having a good evening. Next time we'll be reading the back of a shampoo bottle. I do that though. King Pest. We read that last time, I think, didn't we? A narrative of A. Gordon Pym. Oh, no, that's 20 pages. We didn't read the spectacles. Really? Hmm. Did we read Diddling? Did we read Diddling? Shampoo bottles? I just when there's nothing else to read. We did diddle. We diddled. We diddled. The diddle thing we did. Can't remember. Diddle was a glorious stream, was it? Um, oh, some words with a mummy. That was a good one. Landor's cottage. Oh, I don't know, gang. I'm sorry, Automod. Thank you for releasing me from horny jail mods. Not the mummy. You don't remember how we diddle doodly did? I don't actually. That's the wonders of my memory. You can tell me stories several times, probably. All right. I don't know what to do, gang. I don't want to start another Sherlock Holmes. It's going to be take too long. 3 Sundays in a week. Oh, I like that one. The Devil in the Belfry. We definitely read that. King Pest. The Spectacles. The Spectacles. I I don't know what it is. A Tale of the Ragged Mountains. The Black Car Story. The Black Car Story. Which was that? Ah. Oh, Black Cat. Yeah, we read the Black Cat. We read Black Cat. Uh, we have the gardening streams that are insane. What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say? Tuesday mornings are a bit lively. 6, 7, 9. They certainly are. We're not always like that, by the way. Stop me, but I don't think we've read this one. During the fall of the A Tale of the Ragged Mountains. During the fall of the year 1827, while residing near Charlottesville, Virginia, I casually made the acquaintance of Mr. Augustus Bedloe. This young gentleman was remarkable in every respect, and excited in me a profound interest and curiosity. I found it impossible to comprehend him either in his moral or his physical relations. Of his family I could obtain no satisfactory account. Whence he came I never ascertained. Even about his age, although I call him a young gentleman, there was something which perplexed me in no little degree. The fact that I'm laying in your face does not mean that I like you. Me, I can call cats over most of the time. But you know cats. If they don't want to, they don't want to. I don't think we've read the story. We will continue. That's what we're reading. He certainly seemed young, and he made a point of speaking about his youth. Yet there were moments when I should have had little troubling in imagining him 100 years of age. But in no regard was he more peculiar than in his personal appearance. He was singularly tall and thin. He stooped much. His limbs were exceedingly long and emaciated. His forehead was broad and low. His complexion was absolutely bloodless. His mouth was large and flexible, and his teeth were more wildly uneven, although sound, than I had ever seen teeth in a human head. The expression of his smile, however, was by no means unpleasing, as might be supposed, but it had no variation whatever. It was one of profound melancholy, of a phaseless and unceasing gloom. His eyes were abnormally large and round like those of a cat. The pupils, too, upon any accession or diminution of light, underwent contraction or dilation, just as it is observed in the feline tribe. In moment of excitement, the orbs grew bright to a degree almost inconceivable, seeming to emit luminous rays, not of a reflected, but of an intrinsic lustre, as does a candle or the sun. Yet their ordinary condition was so totally vapid, filmy, and dull as to convey the idea of the eyes of a long interred corpse. These peculiarities of person appeared to cause him much annoyance. I look up to check in on chat. and he was continually alluding to them in a sort of half explanatory, half apologetic strain, which, when I first heard it, impressed me very painfully. I soon, however, grew accustomed to it, and my uneasiness wore off. It seemed to be his design rather to insinuate than directly to assert that physically he had always been what he was, that a long series of neuralgic attacks had reduced him from a condition of more than usual personal beauty to that which I saw. For many years past he had been attended by a physician named Templeton, an old gentleman, perhaps 70 years of age, whom he had first encountered at Saratoga, and from whose attention while there he received, or fancied that he received, great benefit. The result was that Bedloe, who was wealthy, had made an arrangement with Mr. Templeton, which by the latter, in consideration of a liberal annual allowance, had consented to devote his time and medical experience exclusively to the care of the invalid. Dr. Templeton had been a traveler in his youth, and at Paris had become a convert in great measure to the doctrine of Mesmer. It was altogether by means of magnetic remedies that he had succeeded in alleviating the acute pains of his patient, and this success had very naturally inspired the latter with a certain degree of confidence in the opinion from which the remedies had been adduced. The doctor, however, like all enthusiasts, had struggled hard to make a thorough convert of his pupil, and finally so far gained his point as to induce the sufferer to submit to numerous experiments. By frequent repetition of these, a result had arisen which of late days had become so common as to attract a little or no attention, which at the period of which I write had very rarely been known in America. I mean to say that between Dr. Templeton and Bedloe there had grown up, little by little, a very distinct and strongly marked rapport or magnetic relation. I am not prepared to assert, however, that this rapport extended beyond the limits of the simple sleep-producing power, that this power itself had attained great intensity. At the first attempt to induce the magnetic somnolency, the mesmerist entirely failed. In the fifth or sixth he succeeded very partially, and after a long continued effort, only at the 12th was the triumph complete. After this, the will of the patient succumbed rapidly to that of the physician, so that when I first became acquainted with the two, sleep was brought about almost instantaneously by the mere volition of the operator, even when the invalid was unaware of his presence. It is only now, in the year of 1845, when similar miracles are witnessed daily by thousands, that I dare venture to record this apparent impossibility as a matter of serious fact. The temperature of Bedloe was in the highest degree sensitive, excitable, and enthusiastic. His imagination was singularly vigorous and creative, and no doubt it derived additional force from the habitual use of morphine, which he swallowed in great quantity, without which he had found it impossible to exist. It was his practice to take a very large dose of it immediately after breakfast each morning, or rather immediately after a cup of strong coffee, for he ate nothing in the forenoon, and then set forth alone, or attended only by a dog, upon a long ramble among the chain of wild and dreary hills that lie westward and southward of Charlottesville, and are these dignified by the title of the Ragged Mountains. Upon a dim, warm, misty day toward the end of November, and during the strange interregnum of the seasons which in America is termed the Indian summer, Mr. Bedloe departed as usual for the hills. The day passed, and he still did not return. About 8 o'clock at evening, having become seriously alarmed at his protracted absence, we were about setting out in search of him, when he unexpectedly made his appearance, in health no worse than usual, and in rather more than ordinary spirits. The account which he gave us of his expedition and of the events which had detained him was a singular one indeed. "You remember," said he, "that it was about 9 in the morning when I left Charlottesville. I bent my steps immediately to the mountains, and about 10 entered a gorge which was entirely new to me. I followed the windings of this pass with much interest. The scenery, which presented itself on all sides, although scarcely entitled to be called grand, had about it an indescribable and to me delicious aspect of dreary desolation. The solitude seemed absolutely virgin. I could not help believing that the green sods and the grey rocks upon which I trod had been trodden never before by the foot of a human being. So entirely secluded and, in fact, inaccessible except through a series of accidents is the entrance of the ravine, that it is by no means impossible that I was indeed the first adventurer, the very first solo adventurer that ever penetrated its recesses. The thick and peculiar mist or smoke which distinguishes the Indian summer, and which now hung heavily over all objects, served, no doubt, to deepen the vague impressions which these objects created. So dense was this pleasant fog that I could at no time see more than a dozen yards of the path before me. This path was excessively sinuous, and as the sun could not be seen, I soon lost all idea of the direction which I journeyed. In the meantime, the morphine had its customary effect, that of enduing all the external world with an intensity of interest. In the quivering of a leaf, in the hue of a blade of grass, in the shape of a trefoil, in the humming of a bee, in the gleaming of a dewdrop, in the breathing of the wind, in the faint odors that came from the forest, there came a whole universe of suggestion, a gay and motley train of rhapsodical and immethodical thought. Busier than this, I walked on for several hours, during which the mist deepened around me to so great an extent that at length I was reduced to an absolute groping of the way, and now an indescribable uneasiness possessed me, a species of nervous hesitation and tremor. I feared to tread, lest I should be precipitated into some abyss. I remembered, too, strange stories about those ragged hills, and of the uncouth and fierce races of men who tenanted the groves and caverns. A thousand vague fancies oppressed and disconcerted me, fancies the more depressing because they were vague. Very suddenly my attention was arrested by the loud beating of a drum. My amazement was of course extreme. A drum in these hills was a thing unknown. I could not have been more surprised at the sound of the trump of the archangel. But a new and still more astounding source of interest and perplexity arose. There came a wild rattling or jingling sound, as if a bunch of large keys, and upon the instant a dark, dusky visaged and half-naked man rushed past me with a shriek. He came so close to my person that I felt his hot breath upon my face. He bore in one hand an instrument composed of an assemblage of steel rings, and shook them vigorously as he ran. Scarcely had he disappeared in the mist before, panting after him with an open mouth and glaring eyes, there darted a huge beast. I could not be mistaken in its character. It was a hyena. The sight of this monster rather relieved than heightened my terrors, for now I made sure that I dreamed, and endeavored to arouse myself to waking consciousness. I stepped boldly and briskly forward. I rubbed my eyes. I called aloud. I pinched my limbs. A small spring of water presented itself to my view, and here, stooping, I bathed my hands, my head, and neck. This seemed to dissipate the equivocal sensations which had hitherto annoyed me. I arose, as I thought, a new man, and proceeded steadily and complacently on my unknown way. At length, quite overcome by exertion, and by a certain oppressive closeness of the atmosphere, I seated myself beneath a tree. Presently there came a feeble gleam of sunshine, and the shadow of the leaves of the tree fell faintly but definitely upon the grass. At this shadow I gazed wonderingly for a few minutes. Its character stupefied me with astonishment. I looked upward. The tree was a palm. I now arose hurriedly in a state of fearful agitation, for the fancy that I dreamed would serve me no longer. I felt that I had perfect command of my senses, and these senses now brought to my soul a world of novel and singular sensation. The heat became all at once intolerable. A strange odor loaded the breeze. A low, continuous murmur, like that arising from a full but gently flowing river, came to my ears, intermingled with the peculiar hum of multitudinous human voices. While I listened in an extremity of astonishment, which I need not attempt to describe, a strong and brief gust of wind bore off the incumbent fog, as if by the hand of an enchanter. I found myself at the foot of a high mountain, and looking down into a vast plain through which wound a majestic river. On the margin of this river stood an eastern-looking city, such as we read of in the Arabian tales, but of a character even more singular than any there described. From my position, which was far above the level of the town, I could perceive its every nook and corner as if delineated on a map. The streets seemed innumerable, and crossed each other irregularly in all directions, but there were rather long winding alleys, the streets, and absolutely swarmed with inhabitants. The houses were wildly picturesque. On every hand was a wilderness of balconies, of verandas, of minarets and shrines, and fantastically carved oriels. Bazaars abounded, and there were displayed rich wares in infinite variety and profusion: silks, muslins, the most dazzling cutlery, the most magnificent jewels and gems. Besides these things were seen on all sides banners and palanquins, and litters stated with stately dames closely veiled, and elephants gorgeously caparisoned, idols grotesquely hewn, drums, banners, and gongs, spears, silver, and gilded maces. And amid the crowd, and amid the clamour, and the general intricacy and confusion, amid the million of black and yellow men, turbaned and robed, and of flowing beard, there roamed a countless multitude of holy filleted bulls, while vast legions of the filthy but sacred ape clambered, chattered, and shrieking about the cornices of the mosques, or clung to the minarets and oriels. From the swarming streets to the banks of the river there descended innumerable flights of steps leading to bathing places, while the river itself seemed to force a passage with difficulty through the vast fleets of deeply burdened ships that far and wide encountered its surface. Beyond the limits of the city arose in frequent majestic groups the palms and the cocoa, with other gigantic and weird trees of vast age, and here and there might be seen a field of rice, a thatched hut of a peasant, a tank, a stray temple, a gypsy camp, or a solitary graceful maiden making her way with a pitcher upon her head to the banks of the magnificent river. You will say now, of course, that I dreamed, but not so. What I saw, what I heard, what I felt, what I thought, had about it nothing of the unmistakable idiosyncrasy of the dream. All was rigorously self-consistent. At first doubting that I was really awake, I entered into a series of tests which soon convinced me that I really was. Now, when one dreams, and in the dream suspects that he dreams, the suspicion never fails to confirm itself, and the sleeper is almost immediately aroused. Thus, Novalis errs not in saying that we are near waking when we dream, that we're nearer waking when we dream that what we dream. Had the vision occurred to me as I described it, without any suspecting it as a dream, then a dream it might absolutely have been. But occurring as it did, and suspected and tested as it was, I am forced to class it among other phenomena. In this I am not sure that you are wrong, observed Dr. Templeton. But proceed. You arose and descended into the city. I arose, continued Bedloe, regarding the doctor with an air of profound astonishment. I arose, as you say, and descended into the city. On the way I fell in with an immense populace, crowding through every avenue in all the same direction, and exhibiting in every action the wildest excitement. Very suddenly, by some inconceivable impulse, I became intensely imbued with the personal interest in what was going on. I seemed to feel that I had an important part to play, without exactly understanding what it was. Against the crowd which environed me, however, I experienced a deep sentiment of animosity. I shrank from amid them, and swiftly by a circuitous route reached and entered the city. Here all was the wildest tumult and contention. A small party of men, clad in garments half Indian, half European, and officered by a gentleman in a uniform partly British, were engaged at great odds with the swarming rabble of the alleys. I joined the weaker party, arming myself with the weapons of a fallen officer, and fighting I know not whom with the nervous ferocity of despair. We were soon overpowered by numbers, and driven to seek refuge in a species of kiosk. Here we barricaded ourselves, and for the present were secure. From a loophole near the summit of the kiosk I perceived a vast crowd in furious agitation, surrounding and assaulting the gay palace that overhung the river. Presently, from an upper window of this palace, there descended an effeminate-looking person by means of a string made of the turbans of his attendants. A boat was at hand, in which he escaped to the opposite bank of the river. And now a new object took possession of my soul. I spoke hurried. I spoke a few hurried but energetic words to my companions, and having succeeded in gaining over a few of them to my purpose, made a frantic sally from the kiosk. We rushed amid the crowd that surrounded it. They retreated at first before us. They rallied, fought madly, and retreated again. In the meantime, we were borne far from the kiosk and became bewildered and entangled upon the narrow streets of tall, overhanging houses, into the recesses of which the sun had never been able to shine. The rabble pressed impetuously about us, harassing us with their spears and overwhelming us with flights of arrows. These latter were very remarkable, and resembled in some respects the writhing creese of the Malay. They were made to imitate the body of a creeping serpent, and were long and black with a poisoned barb. One of them struck me right upon the right temple. I reeled and fell. An instant and dreadful sickness seized me. I struggled, I gasped, I died. You will hardly persist now, I said, smiling, that the whole of your adventure was not a dream. You are not prepared to maintain that you are dead. And when I said these words, I of course expected some lively sally from the Bedloe in reply, but to my astonishment he hesitated. Huh? Uh, I reeled. An instantaneous dreadful sickness seized me. I struggled, I gasped, I died. Well, you will hardly persist now, said I, smiling, that the whole of your adventure was not a dream. You're not prepared to maintain that you're dead. When I said these words, I of course expected some lively sally from Bedloe in return, but to my astonishment he hesitated, trembled, became fearfully pallid, and remained silent. I looked towards Templeton. He sat erect and rigid in his chair, his teeth chattering, and his eyes were starting from their sockets. Proceed, he at length said hoarsely to Bedloe. For many minutes, continued the latter, my sole sentiment, my sole feeling was that of darkness and nonentity with the consciousness of death. At length there seemed to pass a violent and sudden shock through my soul as if of electricity, and with it came the sense of elasticity and light. This latter, I believe, not saw. In an instant I seemed to rise from the ground, but I had no bodily, no visible, excuse me, but had no bodily, no visible, audible, or palpable presence. The crowd had parted, the tumult had ceased, the city was in comparative repose. Beneath me lay my corpse with the arrow in my temple, whole head greatly swollen and disfigured. But all these things I felt, not saw. I took interest in nothing. Even the corpse seemed to be in a matter which had no concern. Volition I had none, but appeared to be impelled into motion, and flitted buoyantly out of the city, retracing the circuitous path by which I had entered it. And when I had attained the point of the ravine in the mountains which I had encountered the hyena, I again experienced a shock as of a galvanic battery. The sense, weight, and volition of substance returned, and I became my original self, and bent my steps eagerly homeward. But the past had not lost the vividness of the real, not even now, not even for an instant, and I can compel my understanding to regard it as a dream. Nor was it, said Templeton, with an air of deep solemnity. Yet it would be difficult to say how otherwise it should be termed. Let us suppose only that the soul of a man of today is upon the verge of some stupendous cycle of discoveries. Let us content ourselves with this supposition. For the rest, I have some explanation to make. Here is a watercolor drawing, which I have shown you before, but which an unaccountable sentiment of horror was hitherto prevented me from showing. We looked at the picture which he presented. I saw nothing in it of an extraordinary character, but its effect upon Bedloe was prodigious. He nearly fainted as he gazed, and yet it was but a small miniature portrait. It was a miniature portrait, miraculously accurate one to be sure, with his own very remarkable features. At least is what I thought as I regarded it. You will perceive, said Templeton, the date of this picture. It is here scarcely visible in the corner. 1780. In this year was the portrait taken. It is the likeness of a dead friend, Mr. Oldeb, to whom I became more attached at Calcutta during the administration of the Warren Hastings. I was then I was then only 20 years old. When I first saw you, Mr. Bedloe, at Saratoga, it was the miraculous similarity which existed between yourself and the painting which induced me to accost you, to seek your friendship, and to bring about those arrangements which resulted in my becoming your constant companion. In accomplishing this point, I was urged partly, and perhaps principally, by a regretful memory of the deceased, but also in the way of an uneasy and yet altogether harmless curiosity respecting yourselves. In your detail of the vision which presented itself to you among the hills, you have described with the minutest accuracy the Indian city of Benares upon the Holy River, the riots, the combat, the massacre were the actual events of the insurrection of Chait Singh, which took place in 1780. When Hastings was put in imminent peril of his life, the man escaping, the man escaping by the strings of turbans was Chait Singh himself. The party in the kiosk was sepoys and British officers headed by Hastings. Of this party, I was one, and did all I could to prevent the rash and fatal sally of the officer who fell in the crowded alleys by the poisoned barrow of a Bengali. Where are we? That officer was a dearest friend. I was falling asleep, wasn't I? We're almost there, chat. Don't worry. It was my dearest old friend. It was old Deb. You will perceive by these manuscripts. Here the speaker produced a notebook in which several pages appeared to have been freshly written, that at the very period in which you fancied these things among the hills, I was engaged in detailing them upon paper here at home. In about a week after this conversation, the following paragraphs appeared in a Charlottesville paper. We have the painful duty of announcing the death of Mr. Augustus Bedloe, a gentleman whose amiable manners and many virtues have long been endeared him to the citizens of Charlottesville. Mr. B, for some years past, has been subject to neuralgia, which has often threatened to terminate fatally. But this can be regarded only as the immediate cause of his disease. The proximate cause is one of the especial singularity. In an excursion to the Ragged Mountains a few days since, a slight cold and fever were contracted, attended with great determination of blood to the head. To relieve this, Dr. Templeton resorted to topical bleeding. Leeches were applied to the temples. In a fearfully brief period the patient died, and when it appeared that, in the jar containing the leeches had been introduced by accident one of the venomous vermiculous sangsuses which are now and then found in the neighbouring ponds. This creature had fastened itself upon a small artery in the right temple. Its close resemblance to the medicinal leech caused the mistake to be overlooked until too late. Note: the poisonous sangsu of Charlottesville may always be distinguished from the medical leeches by its blackness, and especially by its writhing or vermiculous motions, which very nearly resemble those of a snake. I was speaking with the editor of the newspaper in question upon the topic of this remarkable accident, when it occurred to me to ask how it happened that the name of the deceased had been given as Bedloe. I presume, said I, you have authority for the spelling, but I always supposed the name to be written with an E at the end. Authority? No. It is a mere typographical error. The name Bedloe is with an E the world over, and I never knew it to be spelt otherwise in my life. Then, said I mutteringly, and turned upon my heel, then indeed it has come to pass that one truth is stranger than fiction. For Bedloe without E, what is that but Old Ebb reversed? And this man tells me it is a typographical error. Well, chat, you are indeed right. I am falling asleep. So dramatic. I know Poe. Poe, eh? That was trippy. My pleasure. Ooh. It's expanding time. So I don't know what happened there exactly. So as the Doctor, because he's doing magnetism and they're so closely linked, was writing about his memoirs of his visit to India, the other geezer was picking up on that. Is that what it is? Yeah. So, chat. Thank you all for your cheers. 5 money for poetry. Thank you. I've got 5 money. Bro had a drug trip and then died because leech wasn't a leech, basically, yeah. It was a poisonous leech. Thank you, Angelic Cabbage. Um, who was wrong leech? Classic mistake. I know, right? Almost did that last week. Anybody streaming? Cabbage is angelic indeed. Yeah. Is anyone out there? Gosh, thank you, Raimi, for moderating this bunch of filth. See you tomorrow for tomorrow, next week. Tomorrow, Scribe David. I don't know who that is. There was zero filth. Uh, oh, so it's a tough shout. Um, who? What? It's, oh, Danny. Oh, I don't know. Well, the Scribe David got. Oh, can I raid more than one person? You don't know? All right, put it to poll. Who we got? Yeah, there you go. Polls up. 15 to 40. Double rating should be a thing. You're right. Cover more ground by splitting your bases. Yeah. So we got another minute or so on the chat and on the poll, and once that's done, we're gonna raid. And for those of you who haven't voted, you can still vote. It looks like David is ahead. This time it's not 10 minutes. Yeah, last time that was a bit too much. Fast as fuck, boy. Whoops. Um, tomorrow for Crusader Kings. I know we should have a little bit of a longer session as well. Happy to do that. So, unless there's some. No, it's not going to happen, Sally. Don't worry, the time's up. She's going to be killed while I'm at work. David, so what's his handle? What is his handle, please? Build. The scribe David. So /raid the scribe David. There we go. All right, chat. Evidently, you can post links in chat. Isn't that good? Yeah, we've done recipe links and stuff. Michael, I'm trusting you. Logan killed me with zero hesitation last time. What for? What do you mean? Prickly. When? What? Why? Who? Where? Here we go. It's going. Red. The raid has been created. 19 viewers, 20 viewers in 8 seconds, 26 viewers, 30 viewers in 5, 4, 3,